This has got to be one of the most star-studded episodes of the Chill Spill podcast we have done in a very long time. There is just so much to talk about, starting with Bray Wyatt's release from WWE, Vince's comments on AEW, Ric Flair getting released, also from WWE, Adam Cole possibly getting released or expiring contract from WWE, Hangman Page and All Out, his plans kind of, maybe sort of being there, maybe not, the first dance, AEW Rampage selling out. So much to get into, so little time. So without further ado, let's get into it, guys. This is the 59th edition of the Chill Spill podcast. The S is silent, by the way. Yo, what is going on, guys? It is your boy Tyler Mask, aka Suplex. That's SOOPLEX on TikTok and SOOPLEXX on Twitch.tv, aka Tyler Coon Williams on YouTube, aka the one who lived. And guys, welcome back to the 59th edition of the Chill Spill podcast, and that is pill spelled with an S. But it's silent, much unlike that Chicago crowd from Monday Night Raw. I didn't watch Raw. Y'all already know the deal with me in that show, and really any show from WWE these days. But I heard them CM Punk chants. I heard them Bray Wyatt chants. They were loud and rowdy. They did not disappoint. I'll tell you that much. Also, Goldberg's son. Oh my God, he puberty hit that boy hard. I saw a lot of people thirsting over that little boy yesterday. I'm sitting here like, all right, listen, I know he looks a bit older. Cheekbones growing in. Looking like he might be near 20, but if I'm correct, when we last saw Sundberg in like 2016 or first saw him in 2016, he was 11. It's been 5 years, which means that boy is 16, maybe 16, maybe 17 years old. So he is still a minor. Just like to let everybody know that, because I saw a lot of people saying things. And at first I looked at him like, okay, I'm like, hold on. Let me backtrack. How old was he when I first saw him? I'm like, well, let me just not say anything, and I'll just keep it at bay, because I don't go after little kids. I'm nothing like the Velveteen Dream. I'm nothing like James Charles. That's not me. I don't know about y'all, but that's not me. But we ain't here to talk about Sundberg or Goldberg or Restberg or whatever you want to talk about. We're here to talk about all this news. I was planning to put this podcast out. Y'all know I do this podcast every Wednesday. From time to time, I do it on Tuesday, depending on what's happening with me this week. But I couldn't wait. I had to put this episode out on Tuesday because it was so much that happened in the last 5 days. So much happened that it could not wait until Wednesday to talk about. And possibly the biggest news story to talk about here is the release of Bray Wyatt. You heard that correctly. Bray Wyatt has been released by WWE official as of last Friday. Could have been Thursday, but I'm going to say last Friday. It's insane to me, but at the same time, given of how many people they let go and who they let go since March of this year, I shouldn't be shocked. I really shouldn't be shocked. But I would say, of the names of people we've seen let go by WWE these last few months, 4 or 5 months it's been, this has got to be the most astonishing, and not in a good way, but like the most shocking, because Bray Wyatt has been a very pivotal part of WWE television really since 2010, almost 11 years ago. And as I've done with a lot of the bigger names and really every name that's been released with WWE, I'll take a portion of this podcast to really go over the career of Bray Wyatt. So let's go all the way back to 2010, the year 2010, the time period being that of one of the hottest acts in WWE at that period of time, The Nexus. Now, bear in mind, in early 2010, or I want to say it was either early 2010 or late 2010. I think it was probably early 2010, we saw the debut of like the OG Nexus. Wade Barrett, Justin Gabriel, Heath Slater, David Otunga. I said Heath Slater already. I'm about to say right back. Skip Sheffield. I'm trying to remember all their names. I didn't write any of the names down. I said Wade Barrett, Skip Sheffield, Heath Slater, Justin Gabriel, David Otunga, Michael Tarver, and there's one more, Daniel Bryan. Those 7 guys all made their debut on an episode of Monday Night Raw, and it was one of the most insane debuts of all time. Like, when I think back on, like, you know, debuts in wrestling history that really had me, like, you know, shook, the Nexus debut is right up there. It's top 5 for me, maybe even top 3 if I really think about it. But all 7 of those guys, I think they came in during a John Cena and CM Punk match or something along those lines. And they all beat up John Cena, and they wrecked shit. Now, if you notice, I did not say the name of Bray Wyatt in there because Bray Wyatt was not a part of the OG Nexus. Now, when the Nexus, I don't think they broke up, but I think something happened, and either they disbanded. I don't recall how they got turned into this new version of the Nexus. I think maybe Wade Barrett got injured, or he left. I don't remember what happened. But all I recall is that CM Punk ended up taking control of the Nexus, and it became the new Nexus. And then this new Nexus, you had Justin Gabriel, Heath Slater that were, I believe they ended up leaving. So it was a few other guys, and then there was Husky Harris. Now, Husky Harris, as we all know today, is Bray Wyatt. But at the time, he was NXT Season 2 wrestler Husky Harris. And Husky Harris, he was, you know, out of shape, and there was nothing really about him that people cared about. Of the Nexus members, people cared about him the least, and when we never saw him again, I don't think anybody really cared. Fast forward 2 years later, 2012, and Husky Harris goes to NXT and repackages himself as Bray Wyatt. Almost like this cult leader kind of, what's a leader name I can think of off the top of my head? Charles Manson, the guy who led the group of people who killed themselves in Johansson. I forgot what his name is. Just a cult leader, in essence, was the Bray Wyatt character. And he was paired off with Eric Rowan and Luke Harper. And they ran amok in NXT for about a year. About a year later, we saw these promo packages on Monday Night Raw. This is at the time when I watched Raw every single week. We saw these promo packages from these 3 guys, Bray Wyatt talking, saying, "We're coming." And this would be for like ongoing, I think, a few months. I remember seeing these for quite some time. And then it was an episode of Raw where we saw them debut. Bray Wyatt came out with a lantern, the lights turned out, and that's when we saw the crowd lighting up their flashlights trying to see what's going on. And that really became a staple of Bray Wyatt's entrances for years to come, was the crowd flashlights during this entrance, the buzzers as they call them. And he came out and they attacked Kane, and that set up for Bray Wyatt's debut match being a Ring of Fire match against Kane at SummerSlam 2013, which, if I'm correct, that may have been like the very last Inferno match in WWE history. I don't recall there being any more Inferno matches after this point, and not counting the Bray versus Randy Orton match, and we'll talk about that a bit later on. But this is, I think, the last Inferno match, technically. And it wasn't even an Inferno match because you didn't light your opponent on fire. It was just a ring surrounded by fire. I believe it was actually called a Ring of Fire match, whatever it was called. Hell of Fire, Ring of Fire, one of the two. I believe Bray Wyatt won that match, and you know, from there on, he was just, you know, beating people left and right. He feuded with Chris Jericho for a bit. He feuded with Daniel Bryan to CM Punk towards the end of 2013. 2014 is when we really got, I would say, the ascension of the Bray Wyatt character. 2014 Royal Rumble, he had a match with Daniel Bryan, which I would say is one of his best matches ever. Is his match with Daniel Bryan. I don't think he was in the 2014 Royal Rumble match, and neither was Daniel Bryan, which is why that match was shat on by the crowd that night. But later on, the Wyatt family had ended up having a mini feud with The Shield, which concluded at Elimination Chamber 2014, which gave us one of the greatest 6-man tag matches of all time from the Wyatt family and the Shield. And then after that, continued on the Daniel Bryan and Bray Wyatt feud. We saw Daniel Bryan join the Wyatt family, which lasted all of like a month or two. And then that's when we got that all-time great moment from an episode of Monday Night Raw. I believe it was a tag team steel cage match between Daniel Bryan and Bray Wyatt versus the Usos. And the Usos won. And then Bray Wyatt, he was going after Daniel Bryan. Daniel Bryan knelt down. And Bray went to go give him Sister Abigail, and Daniel Bryan pushed him, and the crowd went insane. And I still remember it to this day in my head, because I remember being at home watching it and just being like, wow, dude, this is so awesome. But the crowd just went ballistic when it happened, and Daniel Bryan started going after Luke Harper, and Eric Rowan tried to climb in the cage to get inside the ring, and he knocked him down. And then he got down Bray Wyatt, and then he got into the corner, because during the time when Daniel Bryan was part of the Wyatt family, he wore this gear similar to Eric Rowan, which is basically like a zip up, whatever it's called. But he zips it down, and he reveals that he's still wearing his gear underneath, and he starts doing this very slow yes chant. It's like, yes, yes, and it gets faster each time. Yes, 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 and it just keeps going. And one of the best shots in wrestling history is the shot of Daniel Bryan, and you see the crowd in the background. As he's doing the yes chant slowly, the crowd's going with him. And with each yes chant, you see more and more and more and more people until eventually the entire arena is doing the yes chant. And Daniel Bryan hits the running knee, and he climbs the cage, and he's doing the yes chant. That moment right there made me a fan of Daniel Bryan, because I'm not going to lie, even though I loved the Daniel Bryan versus the Authority storyline leading into WrestleMania 30, I was not completely sold on Daniel Bryan just yet. I don't know what it was about Daniel Bryan that I wasn't like gang ho about, but that segment turned me into a fan of Daniel Bryan, and that's when I really, really got into his character leading into his match Triple H and Batista and Batista and Randy Orton at WrestleMania 30. I mean, he did face Triple H on the opening match, but you get what I meant. Anyway, so after that began Bray Wyatt's feud with John Cena leading into WrestleMania 30, and this was really the beginning of the end for Bray Wyatt, because John Cena beat him at WrestleMania 30, and it's like, oh, well, it's not too bad. It's one loss. But then he proceeded to lose and lose and lose and lose and lose. I felt like watching Bray Wyatt after that match of John Cena was just like watching somebody slowly descend into depression. Like, this dude just kept losing and losing and losing. He would be in these feuds, and he would have great promos. Like, Bray Wyatt at the top of his game, he was the best promo cutter on WWE television. He would talk a big game, but then when it came to the match, the dude never could pick up the win. And I never understood that. I mean, but like at the time, I was so entranced by the promos that I really didn't care that he lost so much. But looking back on it, he really was, and the quote the Solid Monster Sounds Off, one of my favorite podcasts, he really was the eater of pins. He really was the eater of pins. Now, fast forward to Royal Rumble 2015. He was actually in the Royal Rumble match, and he had a good run. He eliminated like 6 people. But then we got to the end, and I much like all of you do, hated this Rumble for so many reasons. Number 1, Daniel Bryan got eliminated early. Number 2, it was formatted very, very weird. Number 3, the winner. And then number 4 had to have been Kane and Big Show's role in this match. Because towards the end of this match, Kane and Big Show, they were part of the Authority, which should not have been a thing in 2015, but it was, sadly. Kane and Big Show were part of the Authority, and they together in this match were just eliminating everybody's favorite wrestlers. I remember they eliminated Dolph Ziggler, and people booed the hell out of them. They eliminated they eliminated Luke Harper, I think. They eliminated so many people, and then they got to Bray Wyatt. And you're thinking, Bray Wyatt's this big heel character. He could possibly win the match. He's not going to, but he could possibly win the match. And then Kane and Big Show. I think the Big Show knocked him out, and then they both just dumped him out of the ring. And I'm like, wow. Like, that's how y'all did him? like everybody else. I was so angry. But you thought for a second, because he was heading into this feud with The Undertaker, that, okay, things are looking up for him. He lost so much, but he's going into this feud with The Undertaker, who already lost at last year's WrestleMania. There's not much he could gain from losing again, even though if he would have lost again, that would be really the end of The Undertaker's career, because, like, losing twice at WrestleMania, it's like, oh, well, he may lose again, but should he be losing to Bray Wyatt? Bray Wyatt needs it more. People were really debating on who should win this match, even though most people knew in their heart of hearts The Undertaker was winning. It was a big debate on who should win that match. And I was leaning towards Bray Wyatt because I remember that feud. Bray Wyatt carried the entire feud because if I remember, I don't think The Undertaker showed up on television one single time during that feud. I don't remember The Undertaker being on TV not a promo, not a segment, nothing. He wasn't on TV at all. Bray Wyatt just carried the feud. And then he showed up to WrestleMania 31. The match was mediocre. And then he beat Bray Wyatt. And it's like he lost to The Undertaker WrestleMania, so it wasn't that bad. Right? Wasn't that bad. But then 2015 carried on, and he really didn't do much. Now, by this time, I believe they were joined by Braun Strowman. So it was 4 members of the Wyatt family now: Bray, Luke, Eric, and Braun. And Braun at that time was really green, but they had another guy with them. 2016 rolls around, and now the Wyatt family's kind of split up. Eric Rowan's on Raw. Braun Strowman's on Raw, and he's getting a monster push now. And Bray and Luke are on SmackDown. And we get into this feud with Randy Orton, which is a very interesting one. You know, they had the House of Horrors match. It's a very bad match. They had the House of Horrors match, and then led to Randy Orton joining the Wyatt family. I believe he kind of joined actually by his own merit. Like, he asked to be a part of the Wyatt family. And I remember this feud distinctly because of Luke Harper's role in the feud. Because, you know, Bray Wyatt was being manipulated by Randy Orton. And you would think that Bray Wyatt, this cult leader, this master manipulator, this great talker, wouldn't manage to get psyched out and basically led on by Randy Orton. But he did. And the only person who really saw through the bullshit was Luke Harper. Luke Harper will always like side-eye Randy Orton and dead-eye him and push him around. And they would get into like these little shove-offs and whatnot. And Bray would kind of be the mediator. And I think Luke Harper even broke away from the Wyatt family because of like Randy Orton's insertion into the group. And they had this one match. And I was also really angry about this result because Luke Harper was such a pivotal part of this match that I honestly, and I think many people wouldn't even mind if this happened, but I wanted him to be part of the WrestleMania 33 match. It was Randy Orton versus Bray Wyatt. I thought it should have been Randy, Bray, and Luke. And yes, Luke would have never won the match. I never would have been that naive to think that. But Luke should have been a part of that match, in my opinion. They had a match on SmackDown. I think it was either for the WWE. I think it might have been for the WWE Championship. That, I mean, it was a match that Luke Harper lost. So, like, And then they had their match at WrestleMania, which was bad. And I believe Randy Orton actually won that match, which was even worse. 2018 rolls around, and Bray Wyatt is now teaming up with Matt Hardy. Now we have woken Matt Hardy. Matt Hardy's playing off his broken character from his TNA days, and it's a watered down version of the broken character. It never matched up to the Broken Universe character that we knew from TNA. Like, the creativity was stifled. It just did not work. But the pairing between him and Matt Hardy was a very intriguing one because of how the characters synced up with each other. And I believe it led to Matt Hardy actually winning the Andre the Giant Memorial Battle Royal that year. And then nothing really happened with nothing really came of this pairing. 2019 is when we really saw what could have been. What could have been. Because we got these promo packages on Raw every single week. And by this time I wasn't watching Raw. I didn't care. But I kept on hearing about this Firefly Funhouse segment with Bray Wyatt portraying this Mr. Rogers-esque character, and people were heated by this. Like, oh my God, they're ruining Bray Wyatt's character. Why is he playing this Mr. Rogers, Uncle Fummer type character? This is disgusting. Like, people were heated. And at first, I'm not gonna lie, when I first saw the first episode of Firefly Funhouse, I too was a little bit like, I was a little angry. I was like, bro, they really doing him dirty. But then I was like, I'm going to give this a chance, because Bray Wyatt is someone who is very creative, and I feel like he can make this work somehow. So, few weeks go on, a few months go on, and then on one episode of the Firefly Funhouse, because they've been alluding to this Fiend character and this guy is coming, we see the debut of the Fiend mask, and it is the scary, decrepit, cryptic, awesome looking mask, borderline scary looking mask, and Bray Wyatt with these blonde dreadlocks, and it was so cool. And came time with SummerSlam 2019, it's when we finally saw the debut of the Fiend. The red light entrance, the entrance was perfect. It was great. And then the match itself wasn't anything special, but he won the match, and we were on the cusp of something great. Then we got to Hell in a Cell 2019. The Fiend versus Seth Rollins for the Universal Champion. And this was the beginning of the end for the Fiend, honestly. This was truly the beginning of the end. Before it even started, it was the beginning of the end. The match was dumb as hell. First of all, the red lighting was stupid, and they kept going with it afterwards, and I hated it so much. But in this match, you had Seth Rollins using chairs, ladders, tables, toolboxes, everything he could throw at the Fiend. Curb stomp after curb stomp after curb. He had like fucking 8-7 curb stomps on the Fiend, who kicked out of every single one of them, at least at 1 or 2. And like, it was so incredibly infuriating to watch, because you could tell after every curb stomp the crowd started booing because they did not want the Fiend to lose, and then every time he kicked out, the crowd would cheer. And they had to have known this would have happened if the Fiend did not win the match, because of how over he was during the match. They could have called an audible, but they didn't. So then the finish came. And it still angers me thinking about this. So Seth Rollins piles all this bullshit on top of the Fiend's face. Like, all this stuff. And he grabs a mallet, the Fiend mallet. And the referee's like, "Oh, if you can't use it, you can't do that. Like, if you do it, I'm going to have to disqualify you." Seth's thinking about it. And I'm like, he's used every weapon under the sun, no short of a gun in this match. Why are you stopping him from using this hammer? So he takes a whack and hits the Fiend, and the referee calls for the bell, and the cage raises. And I was irate. I could not believe it. There was a disqualification in a Hell in a fucking Cell match. A Hell in a Cell match. And the worst part is that Seth Rollins used weapons prior to this, and it was not an issue. But this mallet, we can't have that. Nobody understood it. Not even X-Pac understood it. And he was on WWE programming while this match happened, and he didn't understand it. The crowd chanted refunds, they chanted AEW, they chanted everything but nice things. And this was essentially, the Fiend was almost ruined at this point. And they tried to make up for it by like the next show in Saudi Arabia. He beat Seth Rollins, but it didn't matter. He already had lost. Well, he didn't lose, but he didn't win. That match did him no favors. And by the time he won the championship, fans were kind of like, they were lukewarm to it. They were still into the Fiend, but they were lukewarm to the title win, because it should have happened the show earlier. So boom, he's the Universal Champion. What do you do? He has a match with The Miz at TLC as the Mr. Rogers Bray Wyatt character, which was kind of weird. Then he had that match with Daniel Bryan at Royal Rumble 2020, which was cool. I like that match. The strap match is cool. It's Daniel Bryan. What do you expect? But then we got to Super Showdown February 2020 versus Goldberg. And everybody is saying there's no way they're going to job out The Fiend to Bill Goldberg. But oh no, let's not forget what company The Fiend works for. Because just like that, after, I believe, 4 spears, and one shitty looking jackhammer, Goldberg pins The Fiend and becomes the new Universal Champion. And this essentially was basically the end of The Fiend. Yes, The Fiend carried on for another year, but his character never recovered. You can say, oh, but he actually ended up with... He never truly recovered after this loss to Goldberg. I will not hear it. He never did. The Fiend, all of his mystique and aura was down the drain. Some of it came back during his segments and during some of his matches, but like the height of it was gone after this point. And we carried on from there. The summer came and he feuded with Braun Strowman and won back the Universal Championship, which by this point, like I said, lukewarm. Then we entered in Roman Reigns returning at SummerSlam 2020 and ruining the match between Braun Strowman and The Fiend. And a week later, they had Payback, where Roman Reigns beat The Fiend and Braun Strowman to become the new Universal Champion. I had no issues with this because Roman Reigns is an amazing heel. The best thing going in WWE today. If there was no Roman Reigns, this company would be in so much deep trouble, it's not even funny. But The Fiend lost again. And then we entered in the feud with Randy Orton and The Fiend. And it was... I don't even know how to go about this. But just to fast forward to TLC 2020, where they had that whatever match. I don't know what the match was supposed to be. I don't remember it. I can't recall it. But I do remember Randy Orton winning that match and setting The Fiend on fire. It was a wax figure. He didn't actually burn Bray Wyatt to crisp, but setting The Fiend on fire. The Fiend was literally ablaze, burning up into a crisp. In the middle of the ring, we saw a live murder on the WWE network. Only for The Fiend to be reincarnated this year, leading into WrestleMania 37. And then we get to WrestleMania 37, and we have red lighting. Fans were even speculating on if that was even actually The Fiend or not. I don't know. To this day, I don't know if that was actually The Fiend or not. But we have this weird, odd, terrible match with Alexa Bliss, who's actually part of The Fiend's character now, on the ramp, drenched in this black liquid, looking like the Enchantress from Suicide Squad 2016. Mind you, Suicide Squad comes out later this week. I'm actually looking forward to it. John Cena's going to be in it. But looking like Enchantress from the Suicide Squad, distracted The Fiend, got RKO'd by Randy Orton, and then got pinned. And that was it. That was the last match, and that was the last appearance from The Fiend that we saw. Alexa Bliss basically robbed The Fiend of his character, because Alexa Bliss, after this point, just took on his character. Took his segments, she didn't take his characters because she ended up making the whole Lily character, but she basically they gave Alexa Bliss The Fiend's gimmick. And we never saw him on TV again. And we heard reports he's out because he's dealing with depression and is coping with the death of Brody Lee. But those are reports. We don't know that for sure. And then come to find out he's been released by WWE due to budget cuts. You know what? At this point, I'm not shocked. I'm not even surprised by anybody who gets released by WWE. No short of Roman Reigns or Seth Rollins, Bayley, Charlotte, Becky, or Sasha, nobody on that entire roster is going to shock me at this point. Because Bray Wyatt was like one of the pinnacle stars in WWE. He was a part of the roster for 10 years. And they released him due to budget cuts. They released Braun Strowman and Aleister Black and Buddy Murphy and the Iconics and Mickey James and Durande. and many others due to budget cuts. I hope that the roster sees this as a wake-up call, that no matter how much money you make, what value you have to this company, you mean nothing to them at the end of the day. You are a toy to them. They can use and abuse and dispose of any point in time. As a person, you are valued. But as a wrestler to this company, you are nothing more than a toy. And it's sad to say that. But it seems more and more like a reality every time I see these releases. And this all happening in the same calendar year. We've had our first release from WWE back in March of this year with Adrande, and we've had over 30, close to 40 more since then. Fucking ridiculous. But that was Bray Wyatt's release. Let's talk about some more fucking foolery from this company. Vince McMahon was on an investor call, WWE's second quarter investor call list for last Thursday. He was asked a question regarding AEW and if he sees them as competition, and this is what he said. Well, it certainly... let me not do the voice. Well, it certainly is not a situation where rising tides, because that was when Ted Turner was coming after us with all of Time Warner's assets as well. That was a different situation. AEW is where they are. I don't really know where their plans are. All I know is what our plans are. I don't consider them competition in the way I considered WCW back in the day. Not even close to that. I'm not so sure what their investments are as far as their talent is concerned. Perhaps we can give them some more. I'll harken back to the previous statement a little bit later, but let me read that last sentence to you. After just speaking for the last 30 minutes about Bray Wyatt's release, let me read that last sentence to you. I'm not so sure what their investments are as far as their talent is concerned. Perhaps we can give them some more. Vince McMahon basically just said, well, if AEW loves signing our talent so much, we're releasing some more as we speak. Please, sign them. I don't care. That's what it comes off across to me. He does not care if AEW takes his talent. Now, I bet you he cares that a CM Punk is probably showing up in AEW. I bet you he cares that a Bryan Danielson is showing up in AEW, even though he doesn't say it. I'm sure he fucking cares. But he's going to portray like he does not. And he doesn't see them as competition, apparently. Even though AEW most definitely at this point in time is competition to them. Because for the fourth straight week in a row, AEW has done 1 million viewers. 1.1 last week. 1.3 the previous week. 1.1 the previous week. Over 1 million the week before that. They're on a hot streak. 1 million every single week. This is the hottest streak they've been on. And they're signing more and more talent left and right. And I'm going to talk about some bigger things AEW's done a little bit later on. But they're on a hot streak. This is the hottest period for them. And if Vince McMahon is going to say they're competition right now, you know what? You can say that, technically, because they're still underneath of you in Raw and SmackDown. But guess what? NXT, they took a fat out to AEW last year and in 2019. And they're still taking fat outs to them this year. Despite not being direct competition on Wednesday night, NXT hasn't beaten AEW not one time since leaving Wednesday nights. Not one time since they moved to Tuesdays have they beaten AEW. Correct me if I'm wrong. But the numbers have fallen even more since leaving Wednesday nights. They don't seem as competition. I don't believe that. He's blowing smoke. Vince McMahon is just blowing smoke because he doesn't want people to know that he does see them as competition. And I think that he probably does believe that he doesn't see them as he did see WCW back in the day. I can believe that. But I don't believe that he doesn't see them as competition. I think he does, and he's just putting on a show because he's Vince McMahon. But that last comment just really frustrates me. Because you look at the roster of people they have and how much talent they have on the roster. And you hear him say we can give AEW some more of our talent. What goes through your head when you hear Vince McMahon, your boss, say stuff like that? after just releasing one of his top stars. What goes through your head when you see something like that? I'll tell you what goes through my head if I'm a WWE wrestler. This man doesn't care about me. This man does not care about my peers or my friends within the company. Why should I still be here? I should probably check and see how much time I have left. Better yet, let me ask for my release since you're releasing other people. Give me to AEW since you don't care. I'm not going to rant and rave. I really wanted to earlier, but I don't have the mental capacity for it right now. At this point in time. It's really, truly frustrating to see stuff like this. Because it's like, I was a fan of WWE at one point. I grew up on WWE as a child. Like most of you did. I grew up watching this promotion for 15 years. 15 years. And I've never been more embarrassed to have said that I am a fan of this product than I am right now. It is absolutely embarrassing to say that I even remotely watch WWE in some form or fashion. Because even though I don't watch Raw and SmackDown, I watch SummerSlam. I'll watch SummerSlam when it comes around. Probably. Maybe I might watch SummerSlam. I watch Money in the Bank. I watch the Royal Rumble. I watch the Big Five. And I watch clips on Twitter, on YouTube here and there. I haven't completely written off WWE. I'll tell you what, though. The end is near. I may very well just give up on that promotion entirely very soon. Because when I see and hear stuff like that, like, how can you get behind somebody who truly treats their talent that way? Morally, from a standpoint, how could you even invest in that company? Even looking at it as a fan, the product is terrible. But then you take a step back and look at the surface and look at what goes on backstage. How can anybody even support that, bro? It's almost sad to even talk about it. I'm done talking about him. Let's talk about Ric Flair, who requested his release reportedly and was granted that and is no longer working for WWE. Ric Flair was with the company for since the late 2000s. I mean, he worked with WWF before late 2000s, but he joined WCW and then he came back to WWF. I believe in 2001 is when he came back to WWF. So he was with WWE for like 20 years. No, well, not interrupted for 20 years because remember, he left WWE, retired in 2008, then went to TNA and wrestled some more and managed some people and joined Fortune or whatever, then came back, and now he's gone. 72 years old. What does Ric Flair have to offer to an AEW? Because I know every single time someone's released, now it is just commonplace to assume they're going to AEW. It's just commonplace. People don't even consider Impact. They don't consider New Japan. They don't even consider any other wrestling company first. AEW is the very first option they think about, which I'll talk about a little bit later and why that's just dangerous territory for them. But what could Ric Flair offer AEW? First of all, let's not even consider him wrestling. It's not happening. He's had too many surgery. He's too old. It's not happening. He should not be taking bumps. He should not be wrestling. He should not be doing any of that shit physically. I don't care if Sting is 63 and wrestles. Ric Flair should not be doing it. And I'm sure he won't be doing it. Does he have great value? Yes, he does. He's Ric Flair. Of course he has great value. What is his value currently with AEW if he were to sign? I believe he has value backstage. Being a great hand. Being, a suit to just about anybody in any, variant backstage. I'm sure he will be because he has so much talent and career experience. On screen, I'm sure is what you're wondering. What would his on-screen purpose be? My thing is, Ric Flair as a manager, we've only seen him manage Charlotte Flair over the last 6 years. He only managed Charlotte Flair. And prior to managing Charlotte Flair, I don't really remember him managing too many other people outside of The Miz. My memory may be serving me kind of wrong here, but outside of The Miz and wrestling, who did he manage after he retired? I think it was just The Miz and Charlotte. And he was, good, I guess. On the microphone, he's still kind of garbled, so it's not like he should be speaking every single week. We respect the hell out of Ric Flair, and that's why we sit there and listen to it. But he's not by any means a phenomenal promo cutter at 72, because I could barely understand him sometimes. So, as a manager, I'm like, I'm not too crazy about it. I think his on-screen purpose would serve one purpose, and that is a Four Horsemen reunion. I mean, you have Arn Anderson managing Cody. You have Tully Blanchard managing the Pinnacle. And I'm sure Ole Anderson is just a call away. And they had J.J. Dillon on AEW television earlier this year managing Tully Blanchard during the AEW Crossroads match with him and FTR versus whoever they faced off against. I kind of forgot. So, JJ, Arn, and Tully have all been in AEW. The only person who hasn't been in AEW is Ole and Ric Flair. And if you can manage to get Rick in AEW and get Ole to come back, you can do a attraction at a show where the Four Horsemen do the pose, do the reunion, and that's it. Now, I'm not saying we need a Four Horsemen, like, you know what? No, we don't need to see Four Horsemen every single week. We don't need the reincarnation up. No, we don't need that. I don't want it. I think it could just do a good pop. You could get some old school fans into AEW for that one show, and that's it. And you could do Ric Flair on TV to do big announcements, or let's say introduce a new championship the way Bret Hart introduced the AEW championship at Double or Nothing 2019. Ric Flair can introduce a Trios championship. Or he could, I don't know. But I don't think Ric Flair should be on AEW television every week. I don't think he has that kind of value at 72 years old. I just don't think he does. Nor should he be managing people every single week. I don't think Ric Flair needs to be in AEW, honestly. I mean, if it's me, he should retire. If he does not want to work for WWE, he should just retire. But if he is insisted on working for another wrestling promotion like AEW, I think that he can do a Four Horsemen reunion and then maybe make an appearance here and there to do announcements and some of the shit. But as far as managing people, I don't really want to see it. Personally, I don't want to see it. But now we got to talk about Adam Cole, baby. Because Adam Cole is somebody else with a WWE contract that is not expired and not released, but seemingly going to expire. It's reported by many reputable sources that Adam Cole's WWE contract expired back in July. And he either signed an extension, a shorter term deal, or is on a handshake deal until the weekend of SummerSlam, where his contract will then be up. More recently reported by Pro Wrestling Unlimited, Adam Cole has already turned down several contract offerings from WWE, leading many to believe his final appearance in a WWE ring may very well be at NXT TakeOver 36. Adam Cole possibly leaving WWE. Am I shocked by this? Honestly and truly, I was thinking about this a few weeks ago. What is Adam Cole's purpose left? Like, what role does he serve in NXT at this point? He's been NXT Tag Team Champ. Well, has he? Has he been I mean, technically no, but he was doing a Freebird rule with Undisputed Era, so not really, but he was NXT Tag Team Champion. He's been a North American Champion, and he's been NXT Champion. He's been a part of the leading faction in Undisputed Era for 3 years of his career in NXT. He was a part of many feuds. He main evented many takeovers. He's done everything there is to do on the short brand that is NXT. What is there left for him to do? He's feuding with Kyle O'Reilly. Well, I think he was. I hope he's not feuding with him still. But after his feud with Kyle O'Reilly ended, or over, I don't know what's going on there. What do you have him do? I don't know. I think the only answer left is to go to Raw or SmackDown, and I definitely think his career is done if he goes to Raw or SmackDown. Look at the track record of guys who've gone to Raw and SmackDown. It does not work out Adam Cole's favor. I think it is a done deal. It is a wrap for him. if he goes to Raw or SmackDown. So if I'm Adam Cole, I would leave. I would leave. And hearing this and seeing that he has turned down contract offerings, I think he's coming from the same mindset I was thinking about. And that is that I have nothing left to offer this company. This company has nothing left to offer me but more money. And unless he wants to be, working for WWE, making money and taking L's on SmackDown every week, his best bet is to leave. And now the question is, is he going to AEW? I think he's probably going to AEW after this. He's probably going to AEW. What role would he serve in AEW? I mean, I completely see Adam Cole being a top guy in AEW. I see it, but I'm going to talk more about this a bit later on. I just want to report that because it was big news. Let's talk a little about... Bottomania. You know what? Let's take a drink of water real quick. Because we are suffering from a few botches here, and we ain't having this shit, bro. We ain't having this shit. Let me take a swig of water real quick. All right. Let's talk about New Japan. Kinda. So, last week on AEW Dynamite, the ace of the universe, Hiroshi Tanahashi, appeared on the show via video message. He was not on Dynamite physically, but he was on via video message. And he basically said that he'll be challenging the winner of that night's IWGP United States Championship match between Lance Archer and Hikuleo, which Lance Archer retained the championship. And New Japan Pro Wrestling confirmed that on August 14th at the LA Memorial Coliseum in Los Angeles, California, Hiroshi Tanahashi will take on Lance Archer for the IWGP United States Championship, which I think this might be Hiroshi Tanahashi's first match on U.S. soil since the New Japan Ring of Honor show at Madison Square Garden in 2019. No. So that was the first. His second was... No, actually, they have plenty of shows. You know what? Never mind. I'll take that back. He's had like a few shows on American soil because New Japan did a few tours in 2018. They did a few Fighting Spirit tours, and then in 2019 it was the Madison Square Garden show. Then they did the show at the Texas Stadium. Then they did like a couple more in like, I believe they did some in New York and Philly and Boston. Like they did a few, and Tanahashi was on them. So I can't say it's one of his first, but it's going to be his first in 2 years. Put it that way. First in 2 years. Big deal. I wholeheartedly believe he's beating Lance Archer. Number one, Lance Archer is cool. It's great. But Tanahashi's a bigger deal. And I think that many fans would be more gravitated towards watching U.S. Championship matches if Tanahashi is the champion. And I hate to be the guy to say it, because everyone says it. It's everyone's favorite word these days. But yes, Tanahashi is a bigger draw than Lance Archer. There, I said it. Tanahashi as U.S. champion would be big business for New Japan and the American market. But then it's bigger business for this reason, because later on that show, Jon Moxley cut a promo basically teasing that he's coming after Tanahashi, claiming that Tanahashi's been kind of ducking and dodging him for quite some time, and that he's coming for that ass. You think about this, and you think about the fact that Tanahashi's facing Lance Archer at NJPW Resurgence for the U.S. Championship. Consider the fact that Lance Archer beats Jon Moxley for the U.S. Championship just 2 weeks ago. And all the stars look like they're aligning towards a Hiroshi Tanahashi versus Jon Moxley match. And I think many of you, like me, are thinking that this is imminent for All Out. Now, let's just think about this here. If this is true, and we get Tanahashi versus Jon Moxley All Out, and we get CM Punk versus Darby Allin at All Out, that is going to be one of AEW's biggest shows ever. Ever. All that star power on one show is fascinating. But we talk about All Out, we got to talk about Hangman Page. Somebody who many fans, including myself, are betting on to be a part of All Out. And now it seems as if he is not even written into the plans for All Out anymore. Just last week, Fight for the Fall, we had a 5-man tag team match, 10-man tag team match, 5-on-5 I meant. Hangman Page and the Dark Order versus the Elite, Kenny Omega, the Young Bucks, and the Good Brothers. If Hangman Page and the Dark Order win, they get their respective championship matches against Kenny Omega and the Young Bucks. And if the Elites win, then they do not get it. And as you would guess, the Elites won and Hangman Page lost. Now, I say as you would guess because it happened already, but I think many of you, like me, were assuming that Hangman Page and the Dark Order will win. But they lost. So it was kind of let me scratch my head like, well, maybe it's not happening all out. But now the reports are not only is Hangman Page not challenging Kenny Omega for the AEW World Championship at All Out, but he's not even on the show. He's not written into the plans to be on the show. And my question is, why would that be? Why would he be taken off the entire show? And I had a whole clip talking about this. I'll splice it in here. If you heard it already, skip ahead 10 minutes. But if not, here's a clip of me covering this a bit earlier. That was my thoughts before I heard that he's not appearing at All Out. But now I gotta ask, why would they take him off the show? And then I start to think a little bit more about it. And I'm saying, well, it is August. September is next month. That's 4 weeks from, the next show, All Out. But 2 weeks after All Out, maybe even 3 weeks after All Out, is Wrestle Grand Slam at the Arthur Ashe Stadium, where there'll be packed house, possibly, of nearly 20,000 fans in attendance. So, would it be smarter for AEW to hold off on Hangman Page doing that match, because you're going to have CM Punk on that show already? Would it make sense to just hold off for 3 more weeks and have Hangman Page challenge Kenny Omega for the AEW World Championship at Wrestle Grand Slam? I think it makes more sense to possibly do that and not stifle Hangman Page's victory with CM Punk on the show. So the more I think about it, the more that makes sense. However, I ask and I beg of AEW, if the plan is not to do Hangman Page versus Kenny Omega All Out, do it at Arthur Ashe Stadium and do not hold off any longer. Because you do not want to cool Hangman off. He's already technically not at his hottest point, because his hottest point was last year. And I understand why they didn't do it last year. They wanted to push it out for storyline purposes. But he's really not even at his, red hot boiling point. That was kind of past already. He's a little bit cooled off. But you don't want to put him on ice. And the easiest way to do that is to keep pushing the storyline and extending it further than it needs to go. I know Full Gear was the last time that a match, and it's perfect storytelling to do it. But here's what you do. You have the match at Arthur Ashe Stadium, Hangman Page wins, and then you do the rematch at Full Gear. Hangman Page does not need to beat Kenny Omega for the World Championship at Full Gear for it to be perfect storytelling. You can do the third match at Full Gear and have Hangman Page retain. And boom. Perfect storytelling. The feud is over. Hangman can move on. But to drag it out any further is doing a disservice to Hangman Page. Rumors are also swirling around that Christian is next in line, and I don't like that at all, because this is very similar to what AEW did last pay-per-view, where they kind of just insert these guys into the World Championship picture last minute. Because when you think about it, yes, Hangman Page versus Kenny Omega could have been done a Double or Nothing, but they didn't do it. Instead, they did Kenny Omega versus Pac versus Orange Cassidy, which was a great triple threat match. However, it was a triple threat match with little to no build. Yes, they had promos going into it. Yes, they did have matches going into it, but those were done in the course of 1 month. It got 1 month worth of build to that match. So now we're going into Homecoming, and there's only 1 month of build left for All Out, and the match they're not doing is the match has been built up for 2 years. So any match you do that's not Kenny versus Hangman Page is basically a storyline that's been shoehorned in there. I just don't like the fact that it's Christian because, number one, yes, I understand Christian Kenny had a meeting when he first came in, and it no, you just can't. You can't drop it and then pick it up and then it just works. It does not work. It doesn't work. And if they do Kenny versus Christian, then it shouldn't be main eventing the show because that's not a big enough match. If you do Kenny and Christian, then the main event should just be CM Punk at that point. If you do CM Punk versus Kenny Omega, then I don't understand what the whole Darby Allin alluding to face CM Punk was all about. That doesn't make any sense. So the only other person I could think about might be Orange Cassidy because Orange Cassidy got pinned at Double or Nothing and he never got a singles match against Kenny Omega. Yes, Pac didn't get pinned at Double or Nothing, but Pac had a singles match with Kenny Omega a year prior to that. Orange Cassidy versus Kenny Omega hasn't yet to happen. So Orange Cassidy could be in line, but even then, that's 1 month of build. I mean, I guess you could say, oh, you've had 2 months, 3 months in between. I guess you could kind of get away with Orange Cassidy, but you have like 1 month to build him back up to that spot. 1 month. Can they do it? Who will it be? We'll have to see. We'll have to see. I talk about CM Punk, and I got to talk about AEW Rampage, which did officially sell out. AEW Rampage at Chicago, well, at United Center in Chicago, I should state, sold over 1,000, sold over 12,000 tickets during its Friday pre-sale. And Monday morning, yesterday, they sold over 1,600 tickets in 4 minutes, completely selling out the United Center. And this is all off of no matches announced and only CM Punk being teased for the show. Teased for the show. Not even announced, but hinted at and teased. And it's all but confirmed. All but confirmed basically that CM Punk is coming in from Darby Allin saying best in the world to MJF basically, I believe, quoting CM Punk, albeit all but saying his name during his end promo on Dynamite last week. All the rumors, all the reports, Cassidy Haynes, Brian Alvarez, Dave Meltzer, Sean Ross Sapp, you name it. Everybody's talking about it. Everybody has said it. CM Punk is coming in. So it makes sense that this show is sold out. And when he comes in, and when his theme song hits, Cult of Personality hits, it's going to be amazing. And I'm going to be there. I'm not going to be there physically. I wish I could have been, but I can't. It's on short notice. That's the thing about this show, is that it's on incredibly short notice. But when I watch it live and I see it happen, it's going to be rejoicing, man. 7 years off of this moment. But we got to talk about AEW Rampage. That's also coming up next Friday on its debut show. What should I expect? I feel like I might say that for another video. I'll end things out with an AEW Homecoming Preview, though. AEW Homecoming is going to be tomorrow. And on that show, we're going to see a few matches. Christian Cage versus The Blade. The Bunny versus Layla Hirsch. An AEW and AEW NWA Women's Championship Eliminator match. So the winner of that match is going to face, I believe, Camille Brickhouse for the NWA Women's Championship. I'm going to guess on Dynamite. I'm guessing on Dynamite. Who wins this one? Layla Hirsch. She's the better wrestler. I hope it's Layla Hirsch. Previous match, I kind of skipped over to who I think will win. Christian Cage wins. They're trying to get something going with The Blade. He feuded with Orange Cassidy subtly, and then he kind of lost the feud. So now he's feuding with Christian, and he's going to lose to Christian too. So, all right. We have Miro versus Lee Johnson for the TNT Championship. Miro's been doing promos on AEW for the last 3 weeks. Finally getting a championship match on TV. He's going to beat Lee Johnson. We have Chris Jericho versus Juventud Guerrera, the third labor of Jericho. And Chris Jericho must win with a top rope move. Chris Jericho's going to win with a red arrow. I'm just kidding. He's going to win with the top rope hurricanrana, because that's a top rope move technically. And then the main event of that show, I assume, will be Cody Rhodes versus Malachi Black. I supremely hope that they are not doing this with the intent to put Cody Rhodes over. I understand that Cody Rhodes is the angel and Malachi is the devil. But Cody Rhodes should not win this match. As it was seen last week when Cody Rhodes was even remotely getting offense under Malachi Black, the crowd booed him. So I hope Cody Rhodes took that as an indication as to what is to come if he beats Malachi Black tomorrow. He should not. And I might be stupid for believing that this might happen. And I hope I'm not. But I got Malachi Black winning this match. And I initially wanted to end things out with that preview of Homecoming. But I want to bring your attention to something that might be a bit alarming. To me, and to a little bit of you. Hopefully some of you. And not alarming in a bad way, but alarming in a sense that AEW might want to have to consider something else. I was looking at the active AEW roster because we're bringing in Bryan Danielson and CM Punk, possibly, right? Possibly, we gotta say the word. That's 2 new men, and with all these other contracts coming up, you gotta imagine Adam Cole might be on his way to AEW. They might be signing the likes of Buddy Murphy or there's so many other names they could sign. But how many men do they actually have under contract already? I looked at it. AEW has a total of 77 active men on the roster. 77 active men on the roster. And 22 active women on the roster. That's 55 less women than men. I think, number one, they need to sign more women. Well, I think before signing women, please feature women more. But sign more women, because you could use some more. But let's compare that men's roster. 77 active men. Let's compare this to WWE. Monday Night Raw, to my count from the roster page, has 35 active men. So AEW has double the size of the Monday Night Raw roster. SmackDown has 22 active men. AEW has triple, almost quadruple the size of the SmackDown men's roster. And NXT has 33. AEW once again having double that amount. If you do the math, 35 plus 22 plus 33, that equals 90. So AEW has only 13 less men than WWE's entire active roster. Only 13 less people. And when you bring in Bryan Danielson and you bring in CM Punk and you possibly bring in Adam Cole, that number goes to 80. So AEW is soon going to have the same amount of men that WWE has. And yet, they only have, as of this moment, AEW Dynamite as a television show. And you're going to say AEW Dark and AEW Dark Elevation are shows that hardcore fans, and I would say that I am technically a hardcore AEW fan. I watch every single week, and I will be watching Rampage every single week as well. However, I do not watch Dark and Dark Elevation every week because I just don't have the time nor the investment. And I know that's where the rest of the roster goes when I'm not using them. But you have to consider the fact that they have so many people who are not even used on the roster week to week because of the fact that they have almost an infinite amount of people to pull from. They're getting into a dangerous territory where they're going to soon have people that we don't see for months on end on Dynamite. And this is where Rampage comes in. Rampage is a 1-hour show. And I understand that you can't fill up 77 men across 2 and a 3-hour show every single week. I understand that. But here's what I propose to AEW. Maybe not right away, because you want to actually sell Rampage first before you do this. But I think that come maybe, let's say, the end of the year, maybe a draft close to Christmas time, I think AEW should realistically consider doing a brand split. Now, I would not have advocated for this maybe a few months ago at the beginning of the year during COVID, but they have so many people now, and it is so apparent that they can't manage all those people at one time and have them featured week to week, that they need to do a brand split. And it's possible to do a brand split with a 1 hour show because NXT did it for several years before they went to 2 hours. It is possible. How can they do it? I think episode 60 of the Chillspell podcast is the perfect place to do a Tyler Coon Williams version of an AEW brand split. So I'll leave it at that. And guys, that is Chillspell podcast episode 58. What do you guys think? Well, 59, I should say, right? 59, 58. How am I forgetting what episode of the Chillspell podcast this is, bro? Episode 59 of the Chillspell podcast. What do you guys think? Comment down below. Let your boy know. I'm out of here, guys. Make sure you check us out on podcasting platforms: Podbean, RSS feed, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and Apple Podcasts. Just search the name Chillspell Podcast, and you can listen to this podcast hours before it goes up on YouTube. Make sure you go check me out on TikTok, Suplex, Twitch.tv, Suplex with 2 X's, and on Twitter at Tyler Williams YT. I love you as always, and I will talk to you guys later. Peace out, guys.